Okay, today on Pro Mindset, I want to welcome a legend here in Colorado, Loren Landow. Loren is a performance trainer, performance coach, somewhat of a legend in the country when it comes to movement, training athletes, all that type of thing. Loren, I want to thank you for being on Pro Mindset today.
Appreciate it, Craig. Thanks for having me on, and you're all too kind.
No, I don't throw that name, that description around very often, but I really do. You've trained more than a dozen of my clients. You've trained so many kids in the state of Colorado over the years, and you've trained, gosh, hundreds of guys getting ready for the NFL Combine. You've put a lot of guys into the NFL through your facility, and then you've been most recently for 5 seasons the head strength and conditioning coach for the Denver Broncos. So I think that's a very accurate description. And I think that the athletes that you've trained, especially the ones that I've known, you've made a big impact on their improvement in their movement skills and their speed. You have an eye that a lot of people in your business don't have. Anybody can do a protocol, anybody can do a program, but I feel like you've had that little extra gear that a lot of people in your world don't have to be able to identify, how does this particular athlete with his biomechanics and his giftedness improve?
I appreciate that. I've always been one of those practitioners who's always I care about the athlete in front of me. It was never about the first rounders. It was always about like how can we take this guy who's maybe a late round pick or a free agent type grade, and how can we get him to compete as well as those first, second, third round graded guys? And so I always took a lot of pride in being able to utilize my eyes and then the programming and then the tweaks, the minor tweaks to sit there and say, hey, we can go toe to toe with these guys that they claim are the top 32 in your class. And so I've always had a lot of pride for that. And I enjoy the process more than anything.
Well, we're going to jump right into the NFL world. You've got experience working with athletes in all sports and, at the pro level in multiple sports, but I want to focus on football today. So let's just go to the NFL Combine. You've been to the NFL Combine with athletes that you trained, and you've been to the NFL Combine as a member of an NFL team evaluating athletes. Kind of share with the audience what are the most important things that athletes can do when they show up for the NFL Combine to show out, to make an impression, physical or mental?
Yeah, I would say, everybody's always ticking that box of the physical, right? I'm worried about what I run, what I jump, what I bench, whatever my weaknesses are. I want to make sure my weaknesses aren't glaring, and whatever my strengths are, I want to double down on those. And so I think a lot of times people put so much stock in their preparation on the physical. And, even when I was preparing guys, like there's also everything that you're doing is an interview out there. How you treat the support staff, how you treat people on the late night interviews, how you act toward the support staff on the early morning drug tests. Like everything's being evaluated, and the NFL is so smart. They're looking at every stone to unturned. The drivers who are bringing you from the airport to the hotel, like every interaction you have is going to be scrutinized and evaluated. And so I think a lot of kids don't understand that. I think they sit there and they say, I'm going to get out there, I'm going to run my 40 and I'm going to blow them away and I'm going to sit the rest of the day. Well, that works for some guys. Some guys, that shows you that you're a prima donna, you're afraid of competition. And so I think there's a lot of things that are being evaluated. But when I personally was sending guys to the Combine as a coach, Craig, I was like, it was stressful for me. I want to make sure, did we taper them right? Were they prepared? How do they perform under pressure? Were we able to provide that scenario or that situation with our mock day to make that feeling of when they clinch up and get a little bit of the paralysis by overanalysis, or the stage is finally really big? So that was always a big area for me, was did I prepare them right? Now coming in, with a professional team, I was able to kind of sit back and listen to the things that those decision makers deemed to be important. Like the physicality stuff is important. We know by this time, a lot of these guys tick those boxes. By the time they get to the Combine or the Pro Day, you're just sitting there saying, yep, they are as athletic as they showed on tape. So at the end of the day, I really feel that that whole process is really more of a mental Olympics for the athlete more than a physical Olympics.
I agree with that. And on the agent side, I've gotten phone calls from players on their off day, day 3, right before their performance day on day 4, and they want to go home. They're
Yes.
done.
Yeah.
They're sick of it. It's like, man, I can't deal with this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
So the NFL puts them under a microscope, turns up the heat, and the fire reveals who they really are.
Yes. Yeah. How do you perform under pressure? Because they know at the end of the day, like, the biggest thing athletes always tell me is like they're waking me up early, they're keeping me up late, I'm getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. How you expect me to test? Well, they know as a 22-year-old rookie, you're not going to be making the best decisions. You're going to be staying up late. And then we need to see who you are in those circumstances. And so I think it's a unique way to unveil who they are with fatigue, stressful situations, and see how all of that comes together in the perfect storm. The greats figure it out, and some kids melt down. And like you said, they want out.
Amen. Okay, Loren, what about the dude that runs 4.4 all day long? He goes to the combine, he runs a 4.55, runs a 4.6. And I see that a lot. I'm sure you do too. What do you think is the reason for that?
I think there's a lot of things. I do think it's the scrutiny of the day. I think that a lot of these players, they go tunnel vision. They sit there and say, I've got to run X. If I don't run X, this whole day is a miss. I ruin my draft chances. I ruin the ability to support my family financially. So they put so much pressure on this one race, Craig, and then they clinch up and they tighten up. And so that's one thing I see. I see guys, too, who will be running 4.4 through the training process. And next thing you know, you watch them on the NFL Network, and they get down their stance. They're not even doing the things we practiced. So I think what happens, I think what happens is that stress really reveals. We always say in pressure situations, you fall back to the level of your training. So if your training wasn't focused, detailed, highly intentional, and you get to this all eyes are on me, and then they fold. I've seen that. I think the other thing that's a really glaring point, and I tell these guys all the time when they come in for draft prep, I said, this is probably the first time, if you were not a wrestler or a track and field athlete, this is probably the first time you've ever truly competed by yourself. On the field, you've got 10 other guys that can make you look good if you make a mistake. Now, all eyes are on me, and I think some people fold in that pressure when it truly is about them. I do believe your greats, they're there to show off, and I used to always try to walk them off the ledge. Hey, this is a glorified field day. You go out and you try to win as many ribbons as you can. And that's how I used to always try to make light of it. But I think a lot of these guys just make it so stressful and so about this one event. I'm like, no, dude, there's like 8 other events that you should be concerned about. We just need to make sure we're not too far away from the middle on any of them. I always talk about.
Okay, you've alluded a couple times, Loren, to the greats. And there's been a lot of them that have gone through the combine and they just showed out.
Yeah.
And then they show up as rookies, and they're men as rookies, and they make all pro, all those type of things. What is the separator between those guys? I know they're blessed, and I know they've worked hard, but what else separates them from everybody else?
I can think of like a guy that jumps out right when you ask that question is Pat Surtain. Okay, this kid he's got the pedigree. His dad played how long? His dad was all pro. And then you see Pat come in. He goes out and he tests well. Everything he does is well. And then he comes in. He's quiet. He's coachable. He does all the same things that he did leading up to the process. And so I think the greats do a couple things, Craig. I think the greats remain coachable. I think the greats continue doing the things, the small little things that got them there. I see a lot of guys that once they get to the league, they're like, I made it. And they quit doing all those things habitually that helped them get there. So I believe the greats have this internal clock and this internal understanding of what I need to do to separate myself from the pack. Pat Surtain, I can speak to his first 2 years. We get into stretch lines, and he is doing verbatim the stretch the same exact way each and every day. He is so routine. He's so habitual that, he's one that just jumps off the, here's a young kid who's got all the upside in the world, and he takes advantage of every opportunity to be coached and to do all those little things that he's always done. But I think that holds true if we look at the Michael Jordans of the world, the Steph Currys of the world, the Tiger Woods of the world. Like, those guys have remained coachable over the decades of their work.
Something that comes to mind when you described that was they're focused on their process. And a lot of guys, when they go to the combine, they're not focused on their process, they're focused on the results. They're trying to run a 4.3 when they've never run a 4.5 before.
Correct.
Right? I mean, you see it all the time. And then they run a 4.7. Yeah. And they tell the teams, oh, yeah, I'm going to run a 4.3. They've never run a 4.5.
Yeah.
So they're focused on the results. And the only thing that you can control in sports is your process. You don't know how the ball's going to bounce. You don't know how your body's going to feel, but you've got to focus on your process and getting ready for that competition.
And that's easier said than done when you're communicating it to the 21-year-old kid coming out for the draft, because we always talk about it's process over outcome. And we tell them, if you do these steps, the results in most times will happen. But you also have the kids that they'll nod their head, they'll shake it, and then you go to your mock day and they don't run what they want to run at the pro day, and they lose it, they flip out. I'm like, this is part of the training process. So that is a huge message that we really hone in all the time. It's not about the outcome, it's about the process. And you have to be process driven, because you allude to a great point. There's very few things once the ball is snapped that are in your control. So you have got to have this process laid down, so when you're in the position, you can make all the right adjustments. You can make the right footwork, because your process was so rich and you were so intentional with it.
Okay, Loren, let's shift to what's going on right now this week. Every NFL team is in training camp. Mm-hmm. And typically there's always a couple of rookies that are like superstars the first week before they put the pads on the first 3 days. But it's a grind, and it's not like it used to be. But for these kids, it's still a grind, okay, compared to their friends that are playing video games all day. So let's talk about pucker time, which is about a week before final cuts. What do you see from your perspective? And, when you were with the Broncos and you're in those meetings with your coaches and the front office guys, and they're not evaluating the starters. They're not evaluating the top 5 guys in the roster. They're talking about the guys that could go either way. Put them on the practice squad, IR them. Maybe they'll get claims, so we got to keep them, even though maybe we shouldn't. All those types of conversations are going on simultaneous to the players responding to the pressure. Yeah. So give me kind of like both perspectives of what the coaches and the management's seeing and what the players are feeling during that time.
Well, I think a couple things. I think looking at from like the personnel side and what we're always looking for as coaches and decision makers is what value can this person bring to the team? Okay, we always say the more you can do. Can you play special teams? But not only can you play special teams, do you want to play special teams? That's a big difference. And
no doubt.
From the things I look at is those guys who are your core players. Like, you need to love and fall in love with the process of special teams and embrace it. Whether you're a 4-core guy or you're just on one phase of it, you've got to go. And the term I used to always love hearing ST coaches talk about, this guy will run through smoke. Meaning this guy is going to go and give everything he's got. He doesn't care what's on the other side of that smoke screen, because it doesn't matter if it's a live body or not. He's going to run through it. Do they pull up? And so it's, what are you willing to sacrifice, and how are you willing to attack that position? Those are the things that I think jump out. The little things. Is this athlete, is he still going to go do some extra work at the end of practice? Is he going to stay out there and pick the brain of some veterans? Is he a good teammate? Is he a distraction? Is he always in the training room? Like, those are things that you're always wondering and looking at. Like, is this guy a diva, or is this guy here to play football? Is this guy more concerned with his brand as a third teamer, or is he more concerned with, like, being involved with the process, understanding what his position coaches want, the special teams coaches want, and being the best teammate he can be? Is he giving a good look on scout team? That's a big deal. So many of those guys, like, kind of like, yeah, we understand the starters are the ones need to win the possession. Are you giving them a real enough look that's going to have them prepared for Sunday? So I think those are the key things that we're always kind of gauging and looking at. Is this guy a distraction? Does he have a problem with his weight, either up or down? How much of a pro is he? Is he pulling into the building 5 minutes before the first team meeting or before the first meeting of the day? Or is he here early doing his small things in the training room? Those are the things that and that's why the combine is so important, because we're starting to see the habits of these kids that we're going to bring in. And we need to know that we bring kids into our room or our building, they fit our standard. They fit the model that we want. They're not an anchor in what the things we're trying to establish. So those are all those things those kids who are on the bubble can really work on and really be intentional on, that really helps shape the opinion of some of the decision makers.
Okay, look at it from the player perspective. What are they feeling from your interaction with players? You're warming them up. You've got a relationship with the whole team. Certain players you have a really close relationship with, and they know it, and everybody knows it. The media talks about it, that this guy's on the bubble, and it could go either way. What do you see in the chemistry change of their body and their attitude, their body language, all that kind of stuff?
You'll see a couple things, right? Whether it's the fatigue of camp, the exhaustion of the long days, the cumulative workload on the field, but then that pressure and that stress starts to hit them. And you start to see mood changes, postural changes. They might have been the first guy who was coming out to stretch every day, and now they're coming out a little bit later. Just everything in their process is starting to slow down. They're starting to understand that the NFL train is going to move on without me. The college train was going to kind of wait for you for 3 to 4 years. The NFL train, it is going to move on. So I think some of the guys see that and they attack it, and some guys they're like, oh, maybe this is bigger than I thought. I think that's the one thing, is once they start to see the business side of it, a lot of these kids really get a little bit deer in the headlights, or they kind of just start going through the motion. I try to tell the kids, be the same guy you were day one. Do not change from that. Do not let these coaches see you go from here and then down to here. You need to show them the sustainability, because you think training camp's hard. Wait till you're in the middle of the dogfight of the season and you've got some divisional games coming up, and you need to be that steady guy. On the flip side, I do think it's important for coaches to understand the empathy side of it. So here's what I would tell my coaches at Denver. They say, oh, so-and-so's, his mood's changed, or this has changed. I said, look, put yourself in his shoes. Imagine if I have my staff, my strength and conditioning staff, there's 4 of us. Imagine the general manager came up to us and says, hey, we're going to bring on 3 more guys, and we're just going to evaluate them for the next 3 days, and they might take your spot as a strength staff. I said, that's what these kids deal with, not only through training camp, but all the way through the season. So you have to understand, as much as, I don't think the guy loves the game. Well, one, the game never loved you, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But, your job is not safe at any point in time in the NFL. And so I had to kind of tell my coaches, you need to think from their perspective to have a little bit better empathy when they come into a lift and they might not be in the best mood. Well, here's why. If somebody was targeting your job and people are trying to put them in front of you to replace you, I think that you'd feel a certain way. Now, just like all of us, Craig, you as well, like, we're competitors, so we kind of relish in those opportunities for somebody to try to remove us from our placement. But at the end of the day, that's a real emotion that comes with these kids when, what am I going to do if I don't make this team? What am I going to do? And you see some kids too, Craig, I know you're about to say something, but they also know, they see the writing on the wall. They're like, you know what? I'm buying for that practice squad spot. I know there's 16 of them. I'm buying for that. Like, they already know, they've done the math in their position room. It ain't happening. So unless there's an attrition in that room, they might not be sniffing anything but that practice squad roster.
Well, a couple thoughts in response to that, Lauren, is that I tell my guys that it's constant scrutiny, it's continuous evaluation, and you just know it's like oxygen. It's always there. You can't see it, but you can feel it, especially when you get closer to cut down day. But it's like I get them to focus on the process, and the process is how can you get your coaches to trust you? The magic 5 letter word in football is trust.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches don't play guys they don't trust. They don't keep guys they don't trust. Are you trustworthy? So instead of trying to get the coach to like you, why don't you do your job so that the trust factor goes up?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then the other thing is, and this is a deeper one, is, and I'll ask you this question first. Of the 90 guys that show up for training camp, and at this point 53 make the active roster, how many of those 90 don't want to make the 53?
It's a great question. It's a great question because I think it leads into pressure. I think every guy's going to tell you, I want to make it. Craig, I've seen those guys who just want to tell everybody I had a cup of coffee and put it on my social media that I'm going to camp with the Broncos, and here's my helmet. And I do think there's some kids like when they're cut, I think there's a relief. I think there's a relief because I do think one of the things I heard a veteran who's now retired, played 9 years. He said the hardest thing about the NFL wasn't the high performing level; it was the maintenance of the high performing level every day. You cannot have a down day, and I think going back to that with the college versus pro, that's the reality when these kids sit there and they see how big this thing is and how scrutinized it is. That sometimes it's a relief when some kids get cut.
I
Or,
agree.
and sometimes, Craig, sometimes they have to get cut to figure out how they got in their own way and they need to go to a new team.
Well, what you just described, Lauren, was every day in the NFL's game day. Every day is game day.
Yeah.
Some game days there's 60 or 70,000 people in the stands. But most game days in the NFL, there's nobody in the stands. But there's a lot of eyeballs watching you, and they're making decisions about you every day. And I think that does wear guys out mentally. It just it drains them, right? The other thing I was going to say related to a player mindset, player perspective on coming down to cuts is it's very difficult. Like when I asked you of the 90 that how many of them want to make it, most of the time it's all 90. They really do until they figure out what it's really about.
Yeah.
Because the guys that don't want to make it, they retire 2-3 days before camp because they're having these hard conversations with their wife or plus one, and they're like, man, do I really want to go through this to maybe not make it? We already got this money in the bank. I'm already set for something after football. So they just gracefully, retire.
Yeah.
So for the guys that are there, most of them want to make it. And the question is, can they hold space in their mind for making it when their circumstances don't align with what their intentions are? So let's say they want to be, a 53 guy, but their reps and their place on the depth chart's not consistent with that. They hardly got in the first preseason game. You see guys after that first preseason game change their attitudes just like that. Fair?
Yeah. 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 If you're not getting that first preseason game, that's not a good sign. Or if you're getting minimal reps, that's not a good sign. And so, now, man, I've got to do something here to make them see me. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I think once they come to the conclusion that the writing's on the wall and they're probably not going to make it, I think players' minds go to, what am I going to tell dad? What am I going to tell my girl? Where am I going to go? These guys have been living free in college for 3 to 5 years, and then they went. Their agent paid for their training. Now they're looking at the prospect of moving back home. They might be 23 years old, hadn't been living at home since they were 18, and they got to go back home. And they don't know when their next workout might be.
Well, and I think that's the interesting point you bring up. How many times you just see the fan base, right? These guys are so spoiled. They're all millionaires. They're all this, they're all that. That's like a small percentage of the guys who are on your roster. Like a lot of these guys become nomads and they're working out for different teams every week. They might be getting a call over the weekend. A guy goes down on the Sunday game. They get a call Sunday night, Monday morning that they've got to work out. Well, this can go on for 4, 6, 8, 12, 16 weeks of the season, and they're moving from city to city, jumping on flights. And these guys, like, it's a challenge. Like, you got to scratch, claw, and fight. That's why when we have those kids who are the bubble guys and they finally stick on that 53, I'm like, you hold on to dear life with that rope of your position. Do not give it up. Do not let it go. Do not change who you are in the building, because that is a space that everybody wants from you. They want your spot. Hold on to that rope as tight as you can, and you'll start to see guys that just start to loosen up their grip. They get comfortable. They start to loosen up. Next thing you know, they're out of the league.
I agree. All right, Coach. Being on both sides, I'm gonna ask you a question that's going to take you into the NFL building brain. What do coaches do, and you've probably done it yourself? How do you test players? Like when you're not sure about a player, he could, it's like being at the top of the mountain. He could go up the backside, he could come down the front side, and you need him to be a certain way. How do you test him? What are some of the things that you've seen or done?
I would say from my room, like I can just speak to myself specifically. How many times do I have to tell you something? If whether you're a young guy or a veteran and you're walking in, say we have an 8:00 lift and you're walking in and it's 1 minute tell, I'm like, hey, you were cutting it close. Like, I don't want to find you. You make sure you get in here on time. I turn around and see what they do the next day. Are they 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes earlier now? Are they listening to the advice I give them? So from just a professional standpoint, those are the little ways I'll test them. Or, hey, I'm watching you during pre-practice stretch and you're just going through the motions. Like, trust me, everybody's watching you go through the motions. It's not just me that's catching it. There's other people. And oh, by the way, this thing is filmed. This practice is filmed. You want to show that on tape that you're just going through the motions and the preparation? Because guess what? If you get injured, I can go back to your tape and say, you know what? He didn't even warm up. He didn't even go through the stretch period. So I try to tip that off to the kids. Like, hey, one, you're being evaluated all the time, but also to my veterans, the young guys are looking at you, and the decision makers are also looking at you, saying, "Are you a leader? Are you a role model?" And so I try to always dip in some of my Loren wisdom. Like, I don't care how successful you've been in this league. If you're up for contract, they want to know, are you a good team player? Are you a good leader? Are you a good example for the young guys? Are you part of the standard and the culture that we're trying to set here? And you have to check the guys, I think, every so often. I've done that before. I've had things happen in my weight room where I've had to pull everybody up and say, hey, this is not okay, and this is what we need to do. And to me, it's the response of the players, it's the eyes that I get on me when I'm talking, and then it's the next day actions that tell me if they pass those tests, if you will, that I'm trying to see them live up to. I've always believed this. I heard it from my first year head coach, Vance Joseph. He said a coach-led team will only take you so far. He said it has to be a player-led team. And so I like to sit there and say, like, if I've called out my big dogs, are they in turn now putting out the message to the younger guys? Are they holding the accountability? And it's always nice to see, the response from that.
Well, that's the operative word there. It's respond. It's response. What I've noticed from coaches is, they'll give grace to a player that messes up, but not when he doesn't respond appropriately. And the key for players is it's always the next rep. You throw an interception for a quarterback, and they can MF you on the sidelines on the headset, but they're really watching how you respond the next time you throw the ball.
Yeah.
Right.
What's I've been watching Ted Lasso, and it's goldfish brain, like be a goldfish. It's short memory.
Right.
But do you make the same mistake twice? Like I even tell my staff, I'm okay with mistakes. They're going to happen. But do not make the same mistake twice if we can control it.
Right. Well, the other thing I tell guys all the time is you play football in the NFL for free. Who wouldn't? Run out on the field, get introduced, have, 60,000 plus cheering for you, being on national TV. You get paid for getting taped in everything, videotaped in everything you do.
Yeah.
For getting scrutinized, for putting up with the BS, for dealing with the business aspect of the league. That's what you get paid for. You don't get paid to play football.
Yeah. So you remember earlier in our conversation, I talked about the love of the game and the game loving me. So here's my point on that, and it's to your point. I've had it over the course of the 5 years of different players saying, "Oh, the game just doesn't love me. The game doesn't love me." And I told them, I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa!" I said, "The game never loved you." I said, "It's incapable of loving you. You loved it. You fell in love with this game in Pop Warner, in middle school, in high school. You fell in love with it, whether it was the sound of buckling the chin strap, whether it was the sound of your cleats walking on the pavement before you get over to the grass. You fell in love with this aspect of this game. It never once loved you. But what happened along the way, especially once you got paid, is you changed your perception of what the game should be giving you. The game shouldn't give you anything. You should pour everything in it, not expecting anything in return, and you should just be in love with the process and the game. And that's what I see with guys as they start to get paid is they no longer love the game as much sometimes. And so they have to be reminded of perspective. The game never loved you. You fell in love with it. It's incapable of loving you back. You've got to continue to love it, and it will flourish for you.
Okay, so that's a very critical point that you're bringing up. And that is it more about what you're getting or more about what you're given?
Boom.
Right? And so look at Saquon Barkley. Everybody out there is wondering why he did what he did. But he's focusing on what he's going to put into this season for the Giants, not what he's getting out of it. And if he continues to do that and stays healthy and performs, he's going to get his money. But I think that people in my business on the agent side, families, circle of influence for players, they all are hyper-focused on what are you getting? You got to protect yourself. You shouldn't practice. Hey, they want you to come back too soon. All these comments and conversations that you have with your clients, it's all about what are you getting out? And I certainly understand that is an important thing because when the party's over, what do you got? What do you got to show for it? But to be truly successful, I believe players have to focus on what are you putting in.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I think that's a very similar thought process to, we kind of lose perspective over time, and I deserve this and I deserve that. And I hate it when players talk about the word deserve. I talk about earn. You have earned the right to sit at that table. You have earned the right to be the ball carrier for this team or that team. You don't deserve it. And those two words, I think a lot of people think those are symbiotic words, but they're not. They couldn't be further from each other.
All right, Coach, let's move into we covered getting ready for the combine. We covered, training camp. Now let's look at a 30,000-foot view of an NFL player's career. They start out as a rookie, green behind the ears, not really knowing what the business is about. They start becoming contributors, maybe superstars and things like that at some point in time. What do you think differentiates the great guys from the rest that are able to play double-digit years and be consistent? Like Travis Kelce's had 1,000 yards receiving 9 out of 10 years or some crazy thing like that. And everybody knows he's going to get the ball. How do players like that, maybe guys you've worked with, what makes them different?
There's an internal drive that I've seen. We talked earlier about the greats and staying true to the process and having routines. I think routine is key. You have to have a routine. You have to have a great support staff around you, whether it's who you choose for your girlfriend or your wife or the people that you spend time with. They have to understand this thing isn't forever, and we want to make sure that we're supporting you and helping you and not distracting you. And hey, let's go to the club on Saturday night or Friday night before the game. You have to have the right support staffs, and I think the greats they're wired differently. Whether it's some of the retired guys that still come in here, they know they have to have a routine. They know they've got to get these things done to be high performers in their next stage of life. So I think that holds true in the building for the guys who play the double digits years. They get better at taking care of their body. They make better nutritional decisions. They do tend to have better support staffs around them outside the building as far as their friend groups, but also like who they bring in for their resources on their health, which is a big deal. Like, you have 90 guys in the building. Sometimes it's tough to get everything done in the training room. So, guys with the money, they start to put, their money into some of those people outside. And I think the ones who do it well is they research and they find the right people to help them elongate their career. It's sad because you do see the guys who trust people who are not qualified. They're just wanting to say, I work with so-and-so, and they're not really in it for the right reasons. So I think the guys who make it the longest, they scrutinize the teams they put themselves around, and they understand that to get through the marathon of a season, you have to take care of yourself now. You have to take care of yourself. You can't just, go at it like you did as a rookie and sleepless nights and playing video games all night. I don't know any of my guys who are double-digit year guys who sit around and play video games, but I know so many rookies, 1, 2, and 3, 4-year players who do. So at some point that has to switch where you become a pro. You become a man in the process, an adult, if you will.
No doubt, no doubt. You used the word marathon, and that's a great description for NFL seasons now with 18 weeks, 17 games, playoffs if you're a playoff team, 3 preseason games. Where do you see guys falter the most in taking care of their body? Because even though the team doesn't have all these specialists and all these people that all these modalities that are out there, they still have a core base of competence that if a player just used everybody in the building, they probably could stay healthy the whole season.
They could give themselves a better shot of staying healthy. I think that it's the variability in the sport is so challenging to sit there and say, if I do all these things, I get the right result. Sometimes we do all the right things and we still don't get the right result. So there's amount of luck that comes with it or circumstance. But I will say where they tend to falter, Craig, is that one of the hardest things is how do you stay true to your process if you feel like the process maybe isn't being fruitful on the other side. So say you're with a team and you have a 4 or 5 game losing streak. Man, I keep doing this and I'm not getting the results, or we're not getting the results as a team. I think human nature is self-sabotaging in many aspects. And so when we're not getting those results, we quit doing the things that we thought were going to provide us the results. We say, well, that's not working, and we quit doing it, understanding that there's a law of averages to this thing. There's some ways the ball bounces a different way. So I've seen it in like losing streaks where guys will kind of give up on their process or their routine, or they're just not that same motivated guy. And that's hurtful because it can become contagious in a building. So I think those are areas I've seen people falter. Same thing, like I've seen it individually where, a guy, he's still playing, but he just keeps getting nicked up every week. He's still able to play, but this week it was my knee, and this week it was my elbow, and this week it's my shoulder, and he just feels like he can't catch a break, no matter what he does, no matter what his routine is. And so I think those are some of the things. And I'll say for the young guys, the rookie wall is real. It's real. You get to the end of November, and that's when most of those kids are done playing in college, and then all of a sudden you say, hey, we're 2/3 through, or we're 2/3 through the season. We got more. And oh, by the way, if we're going to the playoffs, like, hold on to your hat. We got half of a season still to go. So I think that becomes daunting if you have rookies who are contributing onto the active roster. I will say this: our last year's rookie class, these kids did not hit a wall. These kids were special. And it was really cool to just watch them persevere. You see a couple kids who get glossy-eyed, but for the most part, that's when I see it as the end of November. These kids are like, this is a long season. Now, to your point, I know you'll bring it up if I don't. That rookie year is long because you started in January with your draft prep. You went January for draft prep. You went to the combine. You had all these visits with these teams. Then you had your pro day. And then, oh, by the way, you went to the draft. After the draft, now I find out where I'm going to live. And now I go into the end of phase 2, start of phase 3, and it's rookie minicamp. And hold on to your hats. It doesn't stop. So that year 1 is a marathon.
year one is brutal. It's one of those things where you're not sure when you're training if you're training at the right place.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're getting on the plane to fly to Indianapolis for the combine, you still have a little bit of doubt if you're ready. And it's like all through that process on draft weekend, there's only two guys in the entire draft that are satisfied with their draft position.
Yeah.
It's two. You know which two?
Probably first and the last.
That's it. First and last. Because the first, can't go any higher than that. The second guy thought he was going first. And then everybody's pissed off after that because they thought they were going to get drafted higher.
Yeah.
But then when there's only one pick, there's like 800 guys. I want that one.
Yeah.
Just draft me. So that dude's happy. Mr. Irrelevant is always happy.
Yeah.
So then they go into OTAs and they're trying to figure out money. They're trying to figure out, hey, how do you be a pro? How do you be a man? What's this look like? My agents told me this. My trainers told me that. My sports psychologist has told me this. My dad told me that. I mean, you got all this input from all these people. And then you talk to some of the vets. And so if you don't know who you are and what you stand for and what you're about,
Mm-hmm.
it's really draining for these players to try to figure out who they are if they didn't know who they were before they walked in the building.
Yeah. You're spot on. Spot on.
And I got a call from my kid last year. It was Thanksgiving time. He's like, Dad, I think I hit the wall. And I'm like, holy shit, bro. I told you it was coming. You
don't believe me.
It's like, yeah, I've had a few of those moments, by the way. Anyway, that's another story. All right. So what I'd like to do is kind of review from your perspective things that hurt players' confidence. Because one of the things that they all got to have is a big dose of confidence and belief in who they are. Belief in who they are and confidence about what they do. But over time, you see confidence take a dip.
Yeah.
You even see it with like Russell Wilson last year. His confidence, just his body language. It's happened to Carson Wentz. All these quarterbacks are so high profile. It happens to a lot of them.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins, all these guys. What is your take on how does a player protect his confidence, rebuild it, so that he can withstand the hits he's going to take on his confidence?
Yeah. It's funny because I can think of like a couple examples over the years, like, thinking about like a young defensive back who's, maybe drafted, later rounds, but, they still think he can play and be a starter and serviceable or maybe a rotational guy. And you see him in practice and he's right there to make a play and he just keeps missing that play. And then you just slowly start to see, like, am I ever going to make a play? Is it ever going to go my way? And so those are things I've seen players do where, they're right there. They're right there. You're just missing the play by a fraction. But it keeps happening. And if they don't have a couple things, they need to have good perspective. I think if they have a good positional coach and a good coordinator, I think that can really help. Hey, you're right there. Everything's right. You're just, you're just a little bit more. I think those things help maintain the confidence. And I think it's like a good hitter in baseball. Like when they're going into a slump, they don't change everything. They make like a minor adjustment. I saw a great video that they were asking Pete Rose, what did you ever do in a slump? And he goes, here's what I did. I either moved in toward the plate, or I moved out toward the plate. I moved back in the plate, or I moved back and forward toward the plate. Or I either choked up or I choked down. He goes, but I didn't change my swing. He goes, all I did was change my positioning. And so, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That old saying is like, make little adjustments, little tweaks, whether it's more film time. I think those things, and a good positional coach, go sit with that positional coach. Coach, I'm right there. Why am I not making this play? Well, you got bad eyes. You're late on this. Your bad hands. Your hands are late. Whatever it is, like, I think those things help spare the confidence of the kid. But the kid can't just sit there and say, oh, bad luck, bad luck, bad luck. Like, he's got to sit there and say, well, now there's a trend. Let's see if one of my coaches can help solve this. I'd say a lot of times what the players do is they'll talk to a player, which I think if it's the right veteran, I think that's fantastic. But go to your coach. Go to your coach and have him help tell you where your gaps are. not always just a player. You got to make sure that player's got the best interest for you too. They see
Oh
you as
yeah,
a
somebody
number
in the same room, he may be throwing you under the bus.
100%.
Save his job and save his big salary. I
You
do.
got
I
it.
would. Who wouldn't? Right?
Yeah, it's survival of the fittest, you know.
No doubt. All right, Coach. I got a couple more questions for you. One is for an athlete out there listening that aspires to be in the NFL. He could be a high school kid, middle school kid, could be a college kid. Um, what's the one thing he can work on right now that's going to prepare him for success where his feet are now? He could be a senior at Regis or some high school there in Denver. Um, but what is the one, just one, that kid can do to be a pro now?
The most important thing, Craig, and it's not on the physical side, but it's being coachable. Being coachable is probably one of the highest valued marks a player can have at any level, at any sport. And to me, that's what really shows longevity. Um, Being coachable, if that's the one thing I can give you, is that
Being coachable,
being coachable. It's huge, huge.
no doubt. Okay, last question. I am a head coach in the NFL or a GM, and I'm in a position of hiring a new sports performance coach. And you walk in my office for an interview. Share with me the 2 or 3 things that you're going to share in that setting that's going to separate you from everybody else in the business. And you're going to take the wisdom that you gained in 5 years with the Broncos and the many years and the many players you've worked for and trained, getting prepared for the NFL. That's going to make you the guy.
Uh, Walking into that room, you have to identify what the common problem is in the NFL. We know it's injuries, and we also know that it's time. I am not going to get any more time by the CBA. And there will be 31 other teams outside the team that I get hired for that are under the same regulations. So how do we make people healthy and how do we get more time? We're not going to. So what you have to do is you have to have an ownership group and you have to have a management team that understand the vision. You have to identify what the gaps are. And it's this: I'm not going to get more time, but I'm expected to have these monumental results. I need to have a bigger and better team, not just me and 3 strength coaches who are going to run racks. I need to have snipers on my staff that can isolate and work with all my different players because I will not get more time. I need more staff. And not only do I need more staff, I need more specialists within the different domains that you are expecting my results from. So I would go in very boldly to a team and saying, these are the resources that we're going to need to take us to the next level. I just consulted for a pro team in US soccer, or I should say professional soccer, not US soccer, professional soccer. And their support staff blew me away of how many people they had for a small roster. We have 90 guys essentially. You got 53 plus your 16 plus the guys that go on IR. You can't do it with 4 people, and you got to have snipers on your staff. So that to me, you have to identify what the problems are, and then once you identify the problem, you have to provide solutions. And that's what I think my time in the NFL showed me. I'm never going to get more time. If anything, the CBA is probably going to change, and you'll end up getting less time in the future. So how do we combat the time issue? I need more staff, and I need more snipers on my staff that can work with the special populations.
Awesome. Is there anything you'd like to add that I didn't ask?
No, you know what, Craig? People always ask me about my 5 years in the NFL, and I'll tell you what, I lived the childhood dream of working with my childhood favorite team. When I was 10 years old, I wrote a letter to John Elway asking for an autograph, and next thing you know, he's the guy who's hiring me. He's the guy who I sat in at personnel meetings with. So, every day for 5 years, no matter how hard it was, it was truly pinch me moments, and I'm forever gratefully indebted to the Denver Broncos, the Bolin family, Vance Joseph, John Elway, George Payton, and Vic Fangio and Nathaniel Hackett for allowing me to be on their staffs.
Well, you're not just a legend; you're a dream maker because you achieved a dream.
did. I was fortunate, very fortunate.
Well, thank you for being on today. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Craig. Thank you very much. That was awesome.
I want to thank you for tuning in to Pro Mindset Podcast. If you enjoyed the listen, please leave a 5-star rating. If the message was a vibration you connected with, and you have any friends, family, or colleagues who would benefit, then please share this episode with them. You can follow Pro Mindset Podcast on the following social media platforms: Instagram and YouTube, Pro Mindset Podcast; Twitter and Facebook, Pro Mindset Pod; LinkedIn, Pro Mindset. We will drop our shows, Pro Mindset Podcasts, every Wednesday morning, and we invite you to listen and subscribe. Also, don't hesitate to check out our archives to listen to previous shows. And finally, I encourage you to embrace a Pro Mindset truth from today's show. It just might be the key to unlock the pro inside you.